What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Nemo Propaganda here, and today we're going to check out the REL Classic 98 subwoofer. Now we'll do this review the same way we generally do, so let me get those main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'll tell you about some standout features that I think are cool, how this is different than a lot of other REL subwoofers, and then we'll kind of wrap up the video, right? So let's talk about the looks first. It's very different aesthetically than most REL subwoofers we know and love. When we think REL, we think of something like the Classic 98, a beautiful compact subwoofer that's available in gloss black or gloss white. No wood veneer finish. REL hasn't done a wood finish in a long time. This almost looks like a vintage subwoofer that someone dropped off at an artisan woodworking shop and said, restore it, cost no object, make it look brand new, right? And what's going on here essentially is REL designed this subwoofer specifically for guys that are into vintage or modern vintage speakers and sound systems. So if you've got something like a set of KLH Model 5s or anything by Fine Audio, for example, this subwoofer was designed for you, which is pretty cool if you ask me. It's got a down-firing 10-inch paper cone. It's a totally sealed cabinet. There's no passive radiator. There's no port. It's got 300 watts RMS out of its Class D amp, and being a REL and a REL designed for the vintage boys, of course it has high-level input as well as low-level input. So that's what's going on here with the subwoofer. Now, if you read REL's product page for the subwoofer, you're going to get a really good idea what this thing is all about. So by all means, feel free to read that thing. I believe they set very realistic expectations on what this subwoofer is all about. The way I'm going to do this review is I'm going to tell you about the T9X, and then I'm going to tell you how the Classic 98 is different, because I think the T9X is like the standard REL subwoofer. That's what you think about when you think of REL subwoofers. You know, or you might think about their crazy exotic stuff, you know, their bigger models, but that's what I think about. And the reason I'm thinking about that for this video specifically is the T9X on paper is very similar to the Classic 98, but the sound is fairly different, and that's what I want to point out. They're both 10-inch models. They both have 300 watts RMS. The T9X has a passive radiator. This is a totally sealed cabinet. But on paper, I could see a lot of guys looking at the extension spec, looking at the power, both 10-inch driver. What's the difference? Let's talk about it. So the T9X is all about accuracy. It's tonally just a little bit warm, excellent handling of delicate passages, very good note-to-note distinction, nuanced detail, bass fidelity overall just absolutely impeccable. It is a sound quality first subwoofer, and it is outstanding at doing all those things. Where the Classic 98 is different, right, is it has almost all of those same attributes. It just changes the priority order of those attributes. So the T9X is all about transient response. The Classic 98 is like, hey, you know what? Of course, that's gonna happen while I'm filming. It is what it is. I didn't want to run the AC. I figured I'd just leave the window open instead. I think it's like 41 degrees outside, so we're getting a nice breeze. Anyways, listen, we're not gonna let that stop us. And if I'm being honest, when I was younger, I was that guy. I was that guy with the loud car that would just zip through neighborhoods disrespectfully because I was just a young punk, and I think we all go through that phase, so I'm not gonna get upset about that. Back to the subwoofer. The Classic 98 reprioritizes those attributes. It takes that transient response and goes, you know what? Let's make sure we have good transient response, but let's trade a little bit of that for tunefulness, for tone, for just good tonal richness and body, right? And if you ask me, it's a nice trade-off. It's a really nice trade-off. And then it looks at the T9X and it goes, T9X, you have a lot of detail in your leading edges. A lot of detail. That's great. I love that. But I want more texture, actually. I just want more texture and richness. So it trades some of that detail on the leading edges that the T9X has and just gives you more tonal textures overall, right? That's what the Classic 98 does. That's what it's all about. That's how it's different, right? Now, just to be absolutely clear, that's not to say it's slow and sloppy. No. It is still a REL subwoofer, okay? But compared to something like the T9X, the Classic 98 is more like, hey man, let's slow down. Let's kick back. Let's relax. Pour a glass of your favorite beverage and let's let the music wash over us. This is not a subwoofer for the critical customer. And what I mean by that is there's a few different types of audiophiles. Some guys they're almost like a reviewer, right? They're listening critically at all times. That's how they enjoy the hobby. And there's nothing wrong with that. You want to hear into the recording. You want to feel like you're in the recording studio. You want to hear every detail, even if you're not supposed to hear that detail, right? Whether it's in the treble, the mid-range, or the bass, you're analytically listening and just paying attention to all of that. This is not for you. I would say instead, go for the T9X. But then there's another type of listener that is more like, hey, I'm not here to stress myself out and critically listen. No. I know some people do that, but that's not me. I like to kick back, relax, and let the music wash over me. This is a relaxing experience. That's what I'm in it for. Hell, I might even fall asleep as I'm listening to music because it's so relaxing. Classic 98 customer, right? That's the difference right there. So, was the trade-off worth it? I'd say so, because they have the other subwoofer for those of you that don't want to give up anything, right? And instead you're like, because the T9X is a little bit warm. The Classic 98 is very warm, right? So if you want those killer transients, those killer, that killer fidelity in the leading edges, T9X still exists. But if you're like, man, I always wish there was a sub that was more tuneful, warmer, tonally richer, much more bass texture, Classic 98 is for you, my brother. So that's the review of the subwoofer itself. I think I've told you who it's for. I think I've told you who it's not for. Let me illustrate one more thing, right? Because this I found this interesting. I realized Rel has another 10-inch subwoofer that I like quite a bit. The HT1003 Mark II. That's $699 for one, or $700. This one's $1,400. So you could buy a pair of 1003 Mark IIs or a single Classic 98. Now, I already told you who the Classic 98's for. But if that's not you and you want to listen a little more critically, maybe not even so much critically, but you're more into like electronic music, for example, I'd say that pair of 1003s is gonna serve you a lot better than the single Classic 98. As far as different speakers I used with this thing, I tried everything that was available in here at the time. I had the Tannoy Autograph Minis I used. I had, of course, my Bucard S400 Mark IIs. My Platamons, I still have my Focal RA906s, I had the Kef R3 Metas here. I used a few different amplifiers, the Prima Luna Evo 100 that's since been sent back, but that was here during this review sample. The Choco Ime, my Kinky Studio separates, of course. And I've actually got a new amp here. You can't see it, it's hidden behind the Classic 98. It's made by Pathos. Wow, this thing is beautiful. I can't wait to tell you guys about that one. But I think that wraps up this video. And I know usually I'll do a lot of other comparisons. I'll do like 3, 4, 5 comparisons, tell you how this compares to other products. But hear me out. This is designed for such a specific customer group that I felt other comparisons don't make sense, because there's no other subwoofer company went, hey, let's make a subwoofer just for the vintage and modern vintage guys. So I don't have anything to compare it to. This is a very unique subwoofer. Now, if you own a different subwoofer and you're thinking about upgrading to this and you want to know the difference, by all means, ask in the comments. I'll do my best to answer that question and help you out. Or if you're between two different subwoofers, you're not sure which one to buy, and the Classic 98's one of the ones you're considering buying, you're not sure the difference, ask in the comments and I'll do my best to help you and answer those questions. But I couldn't think of 2 or even 3 subwoofers that had the same design goal of the Classic 98, so I don't think just a general comparison section makes sense in this video. But to make up for that, in the future, we're gonna have a very special video, because unintentionally, right now, I have pretty much every single 10-inch subwoofer Rel makes. I have the HT1003 Mark II here. I have the red T9X here. I have the Classic 98 here, and I also have the S510 here. So I'm going to do a 4-way comparison video in the future where I compare all 4 of those 10-inch Rel subwoofers against each other and tell you what the differences are, who each one is for, so on and so forth. And it's pretty incredible what they did there. Most guys, especially if you're, most new guys to the hobby, I should say, I would say if you look at a subwoofer and you're fairly new and inexperienced in the hobby, you're looking at driver size and wattage, right? And price, of course, everyone looks at price. And you'd have no idea how different some of these subwoofers can sound from each other. You'd just no idea how different they can be. So I'll do that video in the future, and hopefully that'll make up for not having a general comparison section here. But again, I'm not holding back. If there's any specific comparison you want to know about, hit me in the comments. I'll answer the question, or in the free Discord. I'll be happy to answer your questions there. And I think that's everything I wanted to tell you about the Classic 98. Oh, you know, a couple other things just came to mind. I did notice in my room, this subwoofer specifically, really even distribution of bass, very even. Just wanted to mention that. Could be because of the downfiring design. I haven't had a ton of downfiring subs in here, but I could set this thing like all the way on one side of the room, and it almost sounded like the subwoofer was more placed in the middle of the room. No localization at all, very even distribution. Okay. Now, with that said, I've definitely told you everything I want to tell you about the subwoofer. Thank you for watching my videos, and until next time, take care.